Flippy update.
Do you want fries with that?
It's time for the Flippy update. Flippy is our colloquial name for the disembodied robot arms that are taking our jobs, enslaving our children, and flirting with our spouses, and blowing up our tanks. We use Flippy as a way to explore all the new, fun, and exciting ways the robots are taking over the world, and how there's nothing we can do about it. Today, Gons, is Flippy adjacent, okay? But it's coming from Forbes.com, and the headline is Ukraine's new Kamikaze robot.
Whoa!
Carries an anti-tank mine. Now, first of all, Gons, as our resident person of color here, using Kamikaze in this context, is that offensive? Do we need to cancel Forbes?
No. Why would I? I don't know. There's some level of honor with that, I suppose.
Yeah. It seems like appropriative.
Yeah, sure.
If I were to play the part of a good, obedient, progressive liberal.
I mean, I can make a stink about it to get us a little attention on Twitter or something, you know?
Well,
make a little video, get really mad.
One of these days, Gons, we're going to have to spend all of our victim points, okay? What do we get for...
It only worked once with YouTube when we said, hey, how are you going to stop Asian hate? And they're like, sorry, they backed up a strike. The second time it didn't work, though.
Gons,
they were on to us.
I want you to know, I don't think this, but if I were to take the stance of corporate America, I would ask, what's the point of having people of color on the show if we don't get victim points? Come on.
All right, I'll work up a thing. I'll write on it or something.
Thank you. We need a hashtag.
Sure.
But I mean, Kamikaze doesn't Kamikaze mean divine wind? Is that apocryphal?
Yes, Kami as in like a god, lowercase g, and then kaze mean wind.
Okay.
Wind, yeah. So yes, God's wind, whirlwind.
You could argue that it's like it's got spiritual meaning. It's like it's a religious term almost. And so to use it so flippantly by calling it a kamikaze robot, we should be able to get some victim points out of this.
Sure.
All right, here we go. It goes like this. Ukraine's military has a new remote-controlled weapon, a small ground robot carrying an anti-tank mine known as the Gnome Kamikaze, which is a weird name.
G-N-O-M-E.
Yeah, Gnome, G-N-O-M-E. So what? Okay, so it's a tiny little divine wind or something known as the Gnome Kamikaze. It adds a new dimension to mine warfare.
This is Forbes, right? Yeah, Forbes.
Yeah, this is
double
Forbes.
Checking.
Mobile mine. Ukrainian company Temerland, based in Zaporizhzhia, developed the robot after release of the machine gun armed Gnome. That's the one we've covered before. Was the machine gun robot. Let me start that sentence over again. They developed the robot after release of the machine gun armed Gnome unscrewed vehicle in June. What? Oh, uncrewed. Sorry. The Gnome Kamikaze is based on a four-wheeled platform with an exceptionally low ground clearance, low enough to drive underneath cars and other wheeled vehicles. Oh no, guys.
You know what could have the Gnome Kamikaze could have saved the life of Dugina, the lady.
Dugina saved the life.
Yeah, or
taken the life.
The one that placed the explosive.
That's what I'm saying.
But yeah,
Dugina died of a car bomb. And that's kind of a weird connection here, isn't it? You had the Dugina Russian propagandist, aka journalist, who was murdered in a terrorist attack, as reported from Russia. And Ukraine, I can't remember. Did they take responsibility for it, or is Russia just blaming Ukraine for
I think
stuff?
Russia's just blaming Ukraine.
Either way. It could have been either way.
It's part of it's part of the whole thing. We have the jingle here.
Fiery explosion just outside Moscow. Russian investigators say a car bomb killed the daughter of a close ally in a contract killing. Gloria Dugin, the daughter of Alexander Dugin, whose brain died in the blast of Putin's brain.
By the way,
boom.
people, I know you, our dear listeners, know this, but there are people who like tune into the show for a second and see us reading mainstream news and think that we are endorsing it or something like that.
Yeah, all we do is
not what we're doing.
All we do is believe mainstream news.
Yeah, we got some angry emails about talking about this Dugina person, and from people who obviously did not listen to a word we said. Anyways, so yeah, the timing is very strange. August 25th, that was yesterday, this article came out, like a day after the car bomb explosion that killed Dugina.
Yeah.
So when you think of the series of events here, you have Flippy, or Flippy's cousin, Gnome, the little robot. It's just a strange series of events.
Yeah.
You've got the car explosion, and then boom, the announcement of a tiny, mine robot that can go underneath a car and explode it. Weird, huh? Keeps on going. Its cargo compartment takes a TM-62 type anti-tank mine,
Tank.
a Russian weapon, appropriately enough. Why is it appropriately enough? They're using their own mines against them.
Only Putin uses such devices.
True. And we have to, unless you're Ukraine. The TM-62 carries a charge of 7.5 kilograms of explosive with a magnetic influence fuse set off by any metallic object above it. Edward Trotsenko, CEO and owner of Temerland, notes that the operator can also trigger Gnome Kamikaze to detonate at will. Ukrainian forces have used TM-62 mine extensively. In the current conflict, they are powerful enough to cause critical damage to main battle tanks, or simply flip vehicles over, or simply murder journalists. In general, the mine will at least destroy a track or wheel, leaving a vehicle immobile and helpless. One Ukrainian defender commented that, quote, "Our three main allies are the Dnipro River and Seversky Donets River and the TM-62 anti-tank mine." The Gnome Kamikaze turns these mines into offensive weapons. And I thought that was an interesting aspect of it as well. Just sort of in the abstract, in the philosophical,
Mm-hmm.
First of all, the gnome being a kamikaze, where we have these robots not even necessarily just delivering.
No, they're suicide
weapons.
robots.
They are suicide robots.
It is sort of religious in the context of all the suicide bombers that were,
you don't need to strap. Yes, you don't need to strap dynamite to your chest anymore. You don't need to, of course, we're referring to the sort of
the Islamic
jihadis, whatever strategy there. So you kind of have these kamikaze robots, divine wind robots, turning defensive weapons like mines into offensive weapons. So, again, philosophically, abstractly, it's an interesting dynamic that robots are bringing to the battlefield, sort of flipping the idea of defensive weapons on their heads, which is notable because the U.S. specifically talks about all the aid, all the weapons, all the rocket launchers, all the HIMARS, everything. Specifically, I believe it's even written in the bill that promised all the weapons, that these were specifically defensive weapons.
Right. It's like Ukraine's Iron Dome.
We can justify sending them weapons and not call it a war with Russia because we're not sending them weapons that they can attack with. We're sending them weapons just to defend themselves.
Right.
And here we go. We've got the robots turning these defensive weapons into offensive weapons. It's just, there's so much wrapped up in this one little story about a dumb little gnome robot that I thought it was very interesting. The article continues with just sort of like a history of tank mines and
but
just a lot
I
of
think
stuff.
it's this next little sentence was interesting to me because it says it is the successor to the World War II German Goliath tracked mine. And I thought if you're
making
a
comparison to the Nazis,
if you're doing the Kamikaze, you're doing
there's so much wrapped up
the
in
Nazi
this, man.
thing. I mean, it's just kind of like, okay, so you're basically taking the bad guys' technology and calling it good, and this very much is in line with the military-industrial complex propaganda because we are the war machine, we are the arms dealers, so they have to make it look good. It's like, well, we took the bad guy stuff, but we're making it good for the Ukrainians, Very interesting.
It is. It's compelling because now they're saying it's the successor to the Nazi Goliath track mine. Of course, that has interesting implications to, the sort of Putin's justification for invading Ukraine, saying it's filled with Nazis. So that's weird. But then also the current mine being used, TM62, being a Russian mine. It just seems like these mines are all being made by the bad guys. What's going on? We have... we give the weapons to the bad mines.
We give the weapons to the bad guys, and then we say, we're using the bad guys' technology to make something to defend Ukraine.
Sure.
It's again, circular economies.
Yeah, exactly. That's the military industrial complex for you. Destroy a bunch of stuff, which makes you money selling the weapons to level cities. And then you get your construction contractors to come in and rebuild the cities. Yeah. You're making money all the way around. So there you go. That's your Flippy update for the day. I mean, there's more to it, but we've got other stuff to get to.
Yeah. All right. Well, good for Flippy.